Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Book Club Picks panel. My name is Dontaná McPherson-Joseph, and I am a collection management librarian at the Oak Park Public Library in Illinois. I will be moderating the session. So, what makes a good book club book? I think there are two rules. It has to be interesting and it has to spark discussion. And these books are definitely interesting and are sure to spark some great discussions. I am so excited to welcome Allegra Goodman, author of This Is Not About Us from the Dial Press. So, the death of Jean Rubenstein sparks a realignment of priorities across her family. Her sons are frustrated at home and at work. Her grandchildren are enigmas. Her nieces and nephews, especially the great ones, are really just trying to figure it out. Oh, and her sisters stopped talking to each other shortly after her services. So, it's just family stuff. Um, we're also welcoming April Reynolds, author of The Shape of Dreams from Knopf. Twin breaks the number one neighborhood rule of never call the cops after finding a body in a trash heap at 3 in the morning. But her actions have consequences as Anita spirals into grief over her lost son, and Wanda struggles to support her friend, herself, and her son, who is constantly getting picked up by the police. We also have Maria Semple, author of Go Gentle from Putnam. Adora Hazard is living the good life with her daughter, her coven, and her job as in-house philosopher for the rich Lockwoods. An extra ticket to the ballet, though, starts her on a path that leads both to her past and also to Paris. There's also a statue of mysterious provenance and maybe a bomb, possibly, perhaps. We also have Emma Straub, author of American Fantasy from Riverhead. When her sister can't join her, Annie is forced to experience the Boy Talk weekend cruise alone. But she can totally do this. She was a Boy Talk fan once, before marriage, motherhood, and divorce. Confined to a boat with hundreds of other superfans and the band themselves, singing the soundtrack to her young adulthood, Annie reconnects with her younger self, who was much less afraid of what other people thought. And then last but certainly not least, we have Kelly Yang, author of The Take from Berkley. An experimental blood transfusion procedure brings together ambitious 20-something writer hopeful Maggie and the calculating 50-something Hollywood producer Ingrid in a thrilling novel that pits the blush and bloom of youth against the inevitability of time. Welcome, authors. It's so great to meet you. I had the best time reading your books. So let's dive right in, right? Since this is a book club panel, if you could write one question for a book club, what would it be and why? And we will start with Allegra.
I guess my question would be, do you see anything of yourself in this book? Maybe that's a loaded question, but sometimes it happens. And sometimes, of course, people deny it. That's why I called my book, This Is Not About Us. My daughter thought I was trying to protect our family.
I mean, I could see it, but I also was like, oh, and there's my aunt, and there's parts of what my grandmother talked about, and legit,
Yeah,
I get it, I get it. It's not about us, but it kind of is about us.
yeah.
Um, April.
You sold my question, Allegra. Ah,
You can share it with me.
no, I had the same question, but it's funny. I was totally thinking, I have no idea why this Jewish family so reminds me of myself. I was completely like the woman dying at the very beginning. I'm like, I am that lady. No, it's like no services. I don't want the rabbi. It was great. Um, so I guess like on the fly, if I have to come up with another question, I guess. I would ask in a book club, like, what was your takeaway from this book? What do you think this author is trying to say about grief? What do you think this author is trying to say about justice, especially justice in America?
I mean, that's a pretty solid question. Friends who are watching, I did this for you. So if you're trying to plan book club questions, here we go. Maria, what's your question?
My question would be, what do you think about the idea of aging in place with a group of your a curated group of your best women friends? And what would it look like? And who would make the cut?
That's a spicy
We'd like to
question.
get some wine thrown in other people's faces during the book group.
I mean, that's a pretty spicy question, and I like it. It's legit. Emma.
I guess my question would be like, what if you had to be stranded on a boat in the middle of the ocean with some person that you loved in your youth, whether it was like a band or a some other sort of teen heartthrob, like who would it be? Because I love the deranged look that people get when they start talking about whoever that was, like a friend of mine wrote to me yesterday and she said, I'm going to see Sean Cassidy in concert. And I was like, wow, I think we all have those people, and I could talk to people about that for hours and hours.
Uh, I definitely did that to someone when I got to see Janet Jackson. I was like, you guys, I'm going to see Janet Jackson. And they were like, what? I was like, I'm going. They were very jealous. Uh, Kelly, what would your question be?
So my question would be, I think, how has this book changed your preconceived notion of something? And I love books that kind of challenge that for me and change my view of something. And I hope that for me in this book, that it changes our preconceived notion of aging and who gets judged and who gets taken seriously and who gets to do what we want and the role of race and class, as well as story and who gets to write their truth.
And also, who gets to be arrogant?
Yes.
Like, and just like, I'm right and you're wrong. I'm big, you're little. That's very Matilda, but that is also a thought that I was having during reading the book.
Absolutely.
Okay, so why this story? Why now, right? So, April, you set your story in the 80s. So, why the 80s and not now? Because there are many references, which for the 80s were not too distant, for now is just a little bit more distant, but specifically to the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, especially Emmett Till. But for me, as I was reading, there's this part like that's is right in the beginning of the book there where people are watching the cops and the EMTs come in and it's like the peanut gallery going, y'all not gonna cover that, y'all not gonna cover him up, like, and I was brought back to Mike Brown. So is it maybe that now is statistically less violent than then, or was now too real? Because even though it happens in the 80s, it also feels like really contemporary. So why then and not now?
Actually, I wrote it, wrote the story, and it's based in the 80s because actually the 80s is my childhood. Um, I'm the same age as Tyrone is in the year that the story's taking place, right? I'm 12 years old too. And so, being an 80s kid is kind of weird. I mean, obviously, it was a very dangerous time to live in any city in America in the 80s, except as you guys all know, like when you're a kid, it all feels curiously safe. Like, it was only after we got out of it and I became an adult and had kids of myself, like, wow, I cannot believe I scared to death so often. Um, so for me, it was really a moment to sort of reconnect to my childhood, reconnect to a time that I became sort of socially aware and politically aware, kind of aware of my neighbors and all the stuff that was going on around me in a real way. And so I was sort of drawn to that moment. So that's why I picked the 80s.
It's interesting that you say that we all thought we were like wildly safe as as kids. And like, you know what? We did. We were superheroes. Like we didn't stop watching me, Mom. I'm fine. Let me go play. Except that, this is why you had to get your candy checked and why you had to be back when the streetlights came on. So I see it. I see it. I see it. As someone said that we are invincible in our youth. Yes, we were. And then we got scared because we became adults. So, Maria, in your Dear Reader letter, you mentioned that writing a twisty mystery thriller was a fixation for you, but it had no entry point. But Go Gentle, you seem to have found the way in, and you fulfilled the tenets of the genre. Like the mystery gets solved. It's great, by the way. I can't wait to hear what other people think about it. And you've done it in this very humorous and heartfelt kind of style that seems also uniquely Maria Semple, right? So can you tell us about what that way in was? Were there other versions of a twisty mystery thriller that you wrote before it became Go Gentle?
Mm. Well, it was really the voice that I cracked. And I think that as an author, if you're not comfortable with the voice, it just feels like the book doesn't want to get written. And I really just cracked the voice. And what that was about was that, as you know, my protagonist, Adora Hazard, is a philosopher, and she's a Stoic philosopher. And I was writing her kind of like serious without emotions, and it just wasn't taking flight. It just wasn't a lot of fun, but then, and I'm a Stoic, and I study philosophy, and what I was realizing is that is like any kind of sage, if it's a Buddhist sage or any kind of like really evolved person, which I'm not, has rid themselves of desire. That's like kind of the thing that everything across all these different philosophies and religions kind of agree that if you can get rid of desire, you're happy. And then when I realized that she could be this woman our age, my age, who doesn't want anything, is like totally contented with who she is now, suddenly everything becomes like free and lighthearted and kind of amusing to her, So she just goes through life just loving whatever comes her way. And she has no kind of anxious intentions for the future, regrets about the past. She's just like purely in the present. And I certainly am not purely in the present, but I have a ways to go. But it was really fun and freeing to be able to write a woman who kind of lives this life of the mind, who's just purely present in the moment.
I think that's really hard too, to be in the moment. I feel like Adora can do it all the time, and the rest of us are just like, and I'm in this moment. And then in 20 minutes, I'm going to be freaking out about the future or remembering something that I did that was super embarrassing. Um, but she just does it a lot. And I think it really comes through in the book that she's like, no, I am here now, right here, all the time. So great job, friend.
Thank you. I
Um,
know. Well, we're all working to get there.
Emma, so a boy band cruise, right, is genius in my mind. A genius place to set a novel. It is also time bound because it's constrained to like the length of the cruise. Why did you choose to go with both a cruise and a boy band and not just one or the other? Because both of those things are entirely worlds unto themselves, being in a boy band or being a fan of a boy band and being on a cruise.
You're right. You're right. And I could have written, if I think about it that way, I could have written either of those two novels a thousand different ways. But luckily, I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, when I have an idea, it's usually pretty um like intertwined with other bits of it. Like it's not just a boy band, like floating in the when I had the idea for this book, it was the whole thing together. It was both halves of that equation. Um, and yeah, I think that, for me at least, and I think for a lot of writers, every book sort of comes out of the one after it, not necessarily in like like a 180 degree, like, "Ah, I gotta get away from that." But I did, my last book was really sad. It was all about my father dying, and it was, it was a hard book to write, and I cried every day while I worked on it. And on my book tour and all that, I was just like crying in public all the time, talking to other people about their dead loved ones. And I mean, it was a beautiful experience, but I knew that what I needed to give myself was the opposite. I needed to give myself pure, absolutely deranged joy. And so I went to one of the things that gives me personally pure, deranged joy, which is boy bands. And I had seen that the New Kids on the Block were going on I knew they did an annual cruise. And right after my father died in September of 2022, and the next month they were doing their cruise, and I was like, I should go. I should go. But that didn't work for a lot of reasons. But I did go the following year, and in between, I spent a lot of time sort of working out the story and the characters and all that. And I gotta say, it's not for everybody, but boy, is it a time.
It certainly felt like a time in the book too. It's like there's sequins everywhere and bedazzled things and airbrushed things, and so it comes through this experience of being on a boat surrounded by a bunch of friends or potential enemies, let's be real, who are all into the same thing. And then Kelly, this is your adult debut. You've written for younger humans. How different, if indeed it was different, was the experience of writing for adults as opposed to for our younger readers? And what drew you into wanting to write this book about these women who are trading blood, literally?
Yeah, so it was so different, and I do love both, but I got to swear, I got to write sex scenes, I got to do whatever I wanted. I think the thing that was similar is for me, I always want to be honest when I write, and I always try to shed light on a part of myself and my own personal experience through the books that I write. In this particular case, it is about two women who are trading blood with each other in the hopes that one of them gets younger by taking the younger woman's blood, and the younger person, unfortunately, she's going to have to get a little bit older, but she gets like $3 million. And while I have never traded blood with a younger woman, I just want to be clear about that. I have jumped at the chance to work for women that I deeply admired and trusted, and who in turn took advantage of that eagerness and that shared pain and struggle. And it's one of those things that we don't really like to talk about because we want so badly to believe that women are going to help women. And I do believe that wholeheartedly. I really believe that. At the same time, my lived experience tells me that it's complicated. And I wanted to write about that complication of these two brave women. They're so brave. They took it upon themselves to try to change the rules on aging. And yeah, I mean, Maggie, she signs up to give this woman, this powerful white female producer, her youth. And, but I think about that, like if I was 23 trying to be a writer and someone offered me $3 million, would I have taken it? I probably would have. Like I had no money growing up. I really wanted to write, to be here on this panel with you people, but no one ever talks about the price tag of that. There's a great line in the book. It's basically, I think it's something like, writing is not just a competition of who's the most talented, it's also a competition of who's the least starved. And I did believe that growing up because my mom constantly reminded me of this. She's constantly saying, you don't get to tell this story as much as you want to, because we just can't afford to tell stories for a living. So I get why Maggie did it. And it was so brave. But I also wanted to write about how twisted that is and that's where we're at in society. And by the way, this is something that is happening in Silicon Valley. People are doing this. They're doing this kind of weird blood transfusion. A lot of the, tech billionaires. And I also wanted to explore the other side of the coin, which is Ingrid sitting there learning about this girl, giving her unprecedented access to her life and mentoring her and giving her so much money. And still she wants more. And it's like the fury and awkwardness of all that I thought was just really intimate and weird and disturbing. And I had to write it.
Intimate, weird, disturbing. Yes. If we could make that a tagline for the book, I would still read this book again. Like, yes, it was intimate and it was weird and it was disturbing and also it was great. Um, so we have Miss Allegra, who has been writing the Rubensteins for 15 years. What made you decide to put all of their stories together now and then sprinkle in a few little new ones?
I guess this is the closest I'll come to writing a serial novel. So I was publishing these pieces of this family saga in the New Yorker over the years. And a lot of what encouraged me was actually reader response to them, that people would say, "Oh my God, I love Lily. I want another story about Lily." Or like, "What happened to Sylvia? Like, did they ever start talking to each other again?" And so, literally just getting old-fashioned messages from people. The family grew like a tree, and so it was a tremendously fun. My own little. I always loved Charles Dickens as a child, and he serialized his books in magazines, and the world is very different now, and writing is very different. But this is the closest I think I'll come.
I declare it a success because I realized that it said fictions on the cover, and I was like, what does that mean? And then I started reading. I was like, oh, ho, 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 that's what, okay, okay. And then it kept going, and I was like, whoa. But yes, also I do need more Lily, and I can't wait for people to find out if Sylvia and
Helen.
Helen, my brain was like, and Harriet, like, no, that's a different character that I'm reading right now.
No worries.
If they ever start talking again,
Yeah.
friends, you will be surprised. So Maria talked about this a little bit, but I myself am also a philosopher technically by degree. So I was surprised and excited to read about a modern philosopher. So what sparked the idea to make Adora into a philosopher and a stoic? Because in my experience, it was all about that getting rid of desire and being very dark and serious, and she is not that.
Well, Greek philosophy, Hellenistic philosophy really was just kind of original. They were like the original self-help writers, like Aristotle and all these people. They analyzed happiness and analyzed you know, what it means to be human and what we strive for. And if you go back to these texts, and in my case, like the Stoic philosophers, it really is, CBT came from Stoicism. The Serenity Prayer from AA was like literally written in 300 BC by Epictetus. And it really is just kind of like a protocol for not like losing it all the time, which is what I feel like, having your emotions just like totally run away with you, to kind of like separate out the reality from the emotions and live, and the goal would be kind of inner freedom and tranquility. And so that's obviously appealing. And I just got into it. I was reading around and then started reading the Stoics and really liked it, and then came up with my own little protocol that I do every morning. I do my philosophy every morning. And then from that, I just started reading other philosophers, and it's just like I have to put a timer for 1 hour, then I have to go to writing. But I just really love reading about it. And I usually sometimes I read the original sources, but they're very difficult. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But so I just read books about philosophy and a lot of surveys of philosophy. It's just like super fun and engaging for me personally. And I think it's like so relevant and practical. And anytime I really go into it, people run off and buy the Stoic books and are like, "Oh my God, I'm now totally into this." So it's extremely relatable and very, very easy to implement, like in the moment, and you get the results.
I think that's a great thing about philosophy from like the ancient times, right? It does feel like you can just bring it into the modern times and it will work fine. It doesn't quite work with a lot of the continental philosophers because some of them are just really bad people.
Right. Yeah, you
Um,
definitely have to look the other way a few times when you're reading these people to try to get the good stuff from them, without a doubt. You know, that goes
yes.
without saying. It's you have to really like close one eye and read it with the other. But it's but I do think that there's a lot of real like really penetrating insight that's useful.
I agree. Um, so penetrating insight that's useful is a great transition because we're going to talk about fandom next with Emma. And that's one of the things about fandom, about some fandoms, they just get really deep into their fandom. How many times can I say fandom in one session? Um, but it also gets a bad rep because of people taking things too far, for being too much, for like taking that parasocial relationship and thinking it's a real thing. And there is some of that in American fantasy, though it's not really like a lot, because we're seeing it from Annie's perspective. But the women and the men on the cruise ship are absolute super fans. Like they are in love with this boy, with boy talk. But most of them are respectful. So when you set out to write American fantasy, was there something that you wanted to say about fandom, like with a capital F fandom, or nostalgia, or were you just like, I'm gonna talk about my new kids cruise
Yeah,
experience?
well, I mean, I guess one of the things that was really important to me um was that I didn't belittle it, because I, like a lot of fans, I look at like the hardcore fans of like anything that I'm a fan of, and I think, oh, I'm not like that, like I like to feel, as we all do, sort of above it and superior, and like, like there's a big difference between me and the rest of these fans. Like I'm not crazy, even though what's the difference really, but I wanted to make sure that when describing the really hardcore super fans, that I wasn't making fun of them, that because I think that the older I get, really, the more beautiful I think it is to love something, whatever it is, the if it's a boy band, or if it's the ballet or the opera or an author or bird watching, whatever it is. Like I there isn't enough like joy and passion and love in any of our days. You know what I mean? And so if there is something, even if other people find it utterly ridiculous, that brings someone pleasure, I am in favor of that. Like I don't believe in like guilty pleasures. Like I am I am a fan, and I find, like, moving through the world too, that like when I meet someone else who is a fan, um it makes everything easier. Like, I mean, like people at the bookstore, like through the bookstore, I have met such astonishing people. And so many of them are like just true nerds. You know what I mean? About whatever it is. And so the minute they start talking, all the big fancy stuff goes away, and you're left with like just a passionate person. And so that, I don't know if this answered your question at all, but I guess like the answer is really, I wanted to take it seriously. I wanted to depict the like ridiculousness and the humor of the situation without looking down on the participants.
I mean, I definitely think that that answers the question because when thinking about fandom from like more some kind of an academic like thinking about it from above, basically. People do tend to talk down to them and think that, oh, well, that's a little silly. Why would you still be into that, or why are you into that at all? It doesn't matter. It brings them joy, so let them have this. They're not hurting anybody. As long as they're not hurting anybody, it's fine, right? We're good. Which, might be a little bit different for Maggie and Ingrid. Maggie is desperate to be a writer. Kelly, she wants approval and she wants validation, and she is ambitious and also maybe a little bit too impetuous and also maybe a lot a bit impulsive. Um, but she worries a lot about whether she has the right to say anything, if it's going to bring shame to her family, if it's going to embarrass them or any of the people that she's writing about, right? So she's stuck in this web of what we owe to ourselves versus what we owe to other people. So as you were charting her character arc, what was it about the Maggie and Ingrid relationship that made it so key to Maggie figuring out how to disentangle herself from like that web, as opposed to like in this specific relationship, right? As opposed to maybe a different, less harmful relationship.
That's such a great question. I've thought about it a lot. I think that what was so key was the hope that Ingrid was bringing to the table, the hope that because through this radical whatever experimentation they were doing, that she was going to get taken seriously, that she was going to basically jump the line and be able to be like a real author, real person, someone that people would be able to respect. She wanted someone to kind of save her. And I totally relate to that. I'm a first generation immigrant. My parents and I lived in a motel. Like we had no money. I didn't speak any English. And there was just so little hope that anywhere I could find it, I would cling to that hope. And it became really, really dangerous. And one of the things that was really important that I've had to learn, and it's really, really important for all of us to learn, is that as women of color, we have to realize no one is going to save us. We have to stop hoping that someone's going to come along, whether it's another woman or a person of color, and open that door for us. They may not. And that was a very, very painful, hard truth for me to realize. But the sooner we learn that, the better off we are, because then we can actually fight for ourselves and shield ourselves from that pain and exploitation that comes out of false hope. And I'm not saying it can't happen because I think we are all consciously doing a better and better job every day of keeping that door open for the person behind us. But we can't wait for it. And it takes this weird toxic relationship for Maggie to finally realize that, to realize no one is going to give you permission ever. You just have to take it. And when she does that, we become our own saviors.
I think that's a great like way to think about it. I mean, it sucks that sometimes people have to go through the really gross and mean, evil people to get there. But I think like that lesson, right? Like you can be your own savior. You, not even that you can be, that you are your own savior. I think that's a really important lesson, which is kind of resonating with me right now a little hard. So I'm gonna take that and put it in my think about that later when I'm doing philosophy. Um, and then, in the interest of talking about like big themes here, Miss Allegra, your book has everything from multiple angles. But what I want to focus on is the inventing and reinventing of oneself. So whether it is a child forming her sense of self or a young adult reeling from what looks to be heartbreak, but you're not really sure, or a man in the middle of a career change, you found ways to explore inventing and reinventing someone without passing judgment on the hows and the whys and the wherefores. So particularly with the Rubensteins, who are a family that are just steeped in judgment and seen over the course of several years, how were you able to treat each character with care and consistency in terms of characterization and growth?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. I guess I was interested in taking a family and looking at and sort of turning it in the light like a gem. Rubenstein actually means ruby stone. So it has like, these facets and looking at um, what it means to reinvent yourself as a child or to become yourself as a person when you're growing up as a child, but also to be longing for youth when you're old and to be then in the middle and going through your midlife muddle and crisis, and the way that I did it was by taking the point of view of each of these people in these different generations. And of course, they all see each other differently, and the reader gets to see them all from these different points of view. So for me, again, it was like looking at a gem, and just seeing the different ways that the light plays on it. And I've always just thought that family is just a way to talk about inventing yourself, becoming yourself, um, defining yourself against and with other people. It's about politics, within the family. It's just about human relations. So it's to me a profound subject. And I had the most fun doing it. There's sort of no heroes or villains in my book. They're all just people who are, they're trying, they're flawed, they may be going through something. They may not completely understand that they're going through it. They don't see the whole picture because none of us can see the whole picture. But the reader can see more of the picture and put it together. So the parts of the book and the parts of the family, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
I like that you took it from examining a gem in multiple lights kind of thing, because that makes total sense for the book, because we're seeing them at different ages, like after Jean's death, we're seeing them at different ages, at different points in like their careers, in their lives as parents, or their lives as kids, or their lives as not parents. Um, and so I found that to be like really like meaningful, um, which I hope other people will also find this to be meaningful. And then I love that you guys are giving me like these really great transition lines to go between questions, because examining something like a gemstone from multiple facets also works for grief, and the grief that is a deep part of the shape of dreams, right? So for April, like grief is this wild big thing, and it pulls Anita under like so fast and so completely that it alters her entire being, like the way it like everything just kind of like comes up for her and then splashes out everywhere. So can you talk about your process for being in such a heavy space while writing? Because Anita is not the only one who's like going through it. Like there's also like mental health issues. There's this habit that develops and they just can't get loose from it. So what was that like? Because it's really dark at times.
Huh. I'm gonna sort of try to answer that question in two parts. So first, from the character side, from Anita's point of view, I mean, I think I really wanted to write a character. I feel like we all feel like this when we were Americans. Like bad things happen to us, and then we become congresswomen. Like that is the American story. It's like, yes, my son was murdered, but now I'm president. And there's this sort of American exceptionalism that we all feel like we have to do when bad things happen to us, when in fact most of our stories, bad things happen and you fall down and you just can't get back up, and you don't run for Congress and you don't write legislation. You just It's just a crummy time. And was sort of very interested in that story because I feel like that's not a story that gets told a lot. Like, or at least that's not a story that, like, when you watch the news, that we get told. We get told bad things happen to people and then they built an airplane. And so I just wanted to write another story that wasn't like that. And then as far as like writing, like what I felt when I was writing my story, I think I am someone who like really likes a good cry. Like I love the ugly tears. Like granted, I don't do it like in front of people, but I just, like the snot and bubbly and the whole thing. Um, and so, I felt I didn't shy away from it or try to find ways to I felt it very cathartic, like let me just get all my sadness out in this scene. And then I'll have a great rest of the day. Um, and so that's how I think of it. But I like sad movies or like the same song you listen to over and over again and you cry at the same part. I mean, you just cry. Like Ben by Michael Jackson. It's just, oh, that rat. Oh, it's like I like it. You know, I do it in the comfort of my own home, but but I like it.
I mean, I agree. I am an ugly crier, so I will not be doing that in front of people. But I do like I enjoy is a weird word to say in this context, but there wasn't a moment of enjoyment where I'm like, oh, we are in this. We are in this, and it's not gonna get any better for a minute. So wow. But I'm glad that you actually enjoy doing all the sad things, and now I'm gonna go do something else, and then I'm gonna come back and be sad, and then I'm gonna do something else. It seems legit. Friends in the audience, if you have questions for our panelists, you can drop them in the Q&A box. Please don't put them in the chat because I can't read those. Um, but drop them in the Q&A box if you have them, and then I will read them out to whoever it's for or for the entire room. Just let me know. So we're going to talk about age and aging a little bit. For Emma, you've provided multiple entry points to the story. So we have Annie, who was a Boy Talk fan, is a Boy Talk fan, who pushed away and crushed her own love of the band, and now she's like, find that again. And then we have Sarah, who's younger than Annie and younger than the band, but she's like the super duper competent and responsible person. And then we have Keith, who is the Boy Talk member, who is like having these really deep like relationship issues, but he's also on this cruise with his boy band family. And they're all at different points in their lives, all in the same place and all interacting with each other. So how did it come to be that these particular perspectives were the ones that you chose to focus on in the story, the boy band, the fan, and the cruise staff member, knowing that they were all going to be like sort of across the adult gamut of ages and experiences?
Yeah. Well, so when I started thinking about this book, I really was thinking about it as like a workplace novel. Um, because it's work. Like it's work for the band. It's work for the band to be there. And then as with any, large production, it's not only the five guys like dancing on stage or whatever. There's an enormous apparatus underneath. People, whether it's, I mean, especially on like a cruise ship, it's, do you know how much laundry gets done on a cruise ship every day? It's like people who are cooking the food, serving the food, driving the goddamn boat, like, I mean, there are so many jobs on the ship. And so I wanted to think about it as a work environment and what that felt like. And so that was sort of how I thought about both Keith and Sarah, who's this, young woman in her 20s who is like, who are these guys? Like, she actually likes them because they work hard and they show up on time, but she's not a fan of their music. But I wanted to see that interaction because I also think like intergenerational work friendships are interesting. I mean, like at the bookstore, I'm 45 and most of the booksellers are in their 20s, which like when we opened like almost 10 years ago didn't feel that didn't feel like that much of a gap. And now it's like, oh, I'm your mother's age. I'm your mother's age. Um, and it makes for really interesting conversations and really interesting dynamics. And so I definitely wanted that. And then I knew I had to have a fan point of view or just someone who was, walking in who could really take it in, and who could sort of pick out all of the Easter eggs or whatever, um, but someone who wasn't like fully engaged in the fandom, someone who wasn't like neck deep in the, Facebook groups and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I loved having these three different points of view because it meant that I could really like not only could I move around the ship and sort of get access to different places, but I could also just like um, look at the whole thing from through different eyes. Because like I mean, I started because I was like, what does it feel like to be in a boy band? What does it feel like to be 55 and still be in a boy band and have to go and like, do pelvic thrusts in front of thousands of women? What does that feel like? But then I realized it wasn't only that. I didn't need only that perspective. I needed the other ones too.
And now I'm thinking about the Backstreet Boys on a cruise. Friends, time has flown by. So I know we had like really great questions, but I'm gonna skip to the end because I've got former authors to hear from, and we have like 2 minutes. So it's gonna be what are you reading, watching, or listening to, or writing about that you can share? And it's like speed lightning, and we're gonna start with Allegra.
I am writing a new book, but I never talk about my new books until they're done. So let's reconvene in 3 years.
In 3 years. Okay, solid, legit. April, reading, writing, listening to, or writing about, or watching.
I feel you have to stop putting me behind Allegra because she steals all of my stuff. She just grabs it. No, I feel like it's jinxy to talk. I mean, I too am writing a new book, and hopefully we'll talk about it in 3 years. Right now, I don't know why, but I've really gotten into Ibsen again. Just tell you,
I can
the
tell you
gavel
why.
rocks, just rocks.
Seems like, oh no, I can tell you why. It's Tessa Thompson.
It's you know what? I haven't seen that, but I'm ready.
Legit.
Um,
You gotta see it.
so I'm doing that, and then I'm also actually reading The Grapes of Wrath, and then movie wise, I am so embarrassed, but I'm amongst friends. I am one of those people like I don't sleep a lot. So instead of fighting it and taking lavender and all that stuff, I just go right to Obama and do those animal documentaries, which I am just in love. It's just those little bears and monkeys. Yes. So I do that.
Legit. That's
Yeah.
legit. Classics
Just
and
classics
nature.
and Obama nature movies on
I love
Netflix.
this for all of us.
Yes.
Maria, reading, watching, listening to, or writing about that you want to share, unless they're gonna say reconvene in 3 years, which also is pretty cool and is a nice timeline for us to have.
No, I actually just am about to start The Wager. Is it David Grann? Is that who wrote it? And I normally don't I don't read these nonfiction books, but everyone says when I get into a great nonfiction book, I really love it, but I always just gravitate towards fiction. But this seems like it's a great story and it's just a fun escape, and I'm very excited about starting that, getting into it.
Awesome. And Kelly.
I am also writing, but I can't talk about it, and it's mostly because it's just very, very hard. Like when you're in it, you're like, I don't even know if I can survive this thing. I don't even know if I can like make it to the 3 years. But hopefully it will. And I'm reading Lucky Seed by Justinian Huang.
I have that on my list also. Okay, like we've had the best time, great chat. Um, And I hope that everyone has a chance to find their arcs on NetGalley or Edelweiss or in the plaza. A big round of applause to all of our incredible authors and their works. Thank you everyone for being here and for championing books and reading because I mean that's what we do all day, every day, right? So next we have the afternoon keynote with Meg Wolitzer and Charlie Panic. Have a great day, everyone, and happy reading.